number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 291 of said Sports Card Nation. As we get very close to the National, hope you are as excited for it as I am. Getting ready for Cleveland here. And speaking of excited, happy to have the guest on today's pod, Katlyn Gacesa, one half of the sports card couple, doing social media. She's a writer for Hobby News Daily and really making her way through the hobby. And just a great, we talk about having people doing it the right way and great people, and she again checks those boxes. So real happy to have her on today's show, and she's very forthright and has a passion for the hobby, loves the hobby, and we're gonna talk all about that. So with that being said, let's take a quick 30-second break and be back with Katlyn.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
All right, real happy to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. She's one half of the sports card. I'll say without trying to be the better half of the sports card couple. But we're going to talk about cards and a lot of stuff she's doing in the hobby. Katlyn Gacesa, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. I've seen many of your podcasts and love all your guests, so it's good to be added to the amazing list now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you making some time for us, Katlyn. I said that tongue in cheek with your husband. No offense meant, but I think all men say that, right? My better half. So I just kind of went with that kind of standard. But you're from the Philadelphia area. Kind of talk about how you got your start in the hobby. I know it's the kind of the standard podcast opening question, but I think it's important to kind of, get that baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I, Joey, we are just outside the Philly area. We say the Philly area, but we're really Harrisburg, Hershey. But we're diehard Philly fans. We're diehard sports Philadelphia fans. We got started in the hobby about 1.5 years ago, probably more than 2 years at this point. A friend of ours noticed that we were big sports fans. We go to hockey games, we go to baseball games. And he was like, have you ever collected cards before? And we were like, collected what? And we're collectors at heart. So we collect pins and coins and all other random knick-knacky things. And he was like, you should look into this. And one box later, another card later. And then, it just kind of spiraled. And we decided, you know what, let's go into this and just kind of go all in. And we love it. We love all of the community, the people and the friends we've made. And it has been such a inviting thing. And then about 1.5 years into it, I got a job in the hobby, not thinking it would be kind of a career direction I would want to do. And I saw the passion and excitement, and that's kind of how our story began. And it feels like it's growing and changing every week and every day.
Yeah, much like the hobby, right? It's crazy how fast time does go, and you mentioned your sports fans. That's not new to you, and it was just someone said, hey, there's cards. As someone kind of coming in like that, was it a little bit overwhelming at first, or not necessarily?
I think it was a little overwhelming because we didn't know where we were going and what direction we wanted to go in, because we started off collecting football and basketball cards because that's what everybody was doing. And it felt like, we needed to be in that space. And as baseball fans and as Phillies fans, we were like, let's look into baseball cards. We thought prospecting would be hard and difficult. And after a little bit of time, we realized, it's not necessarily about the direction. You don't have to prospect. You don't have to collect rookie cards. You can collect the things that you really like and enjoy. And we kind of learned prospecting over time. So it's been kind of a fun transition moving from the football and basketball side to more of the baseball side. And though we're the sports card couple, our primary is baseball, but we do enjoy collecting some football and basketball on occasion. And we're kind of in the off season collecting a little bit of basketball. So it's been fun to learn and grow in this space. And I think the community, especially like on YouTube and all the different podcasts, have been super helpful to get us kind of moved into that transition and kind of grow in this space.
You mentioned, heavy Philadelphia sports team fandom. Do your collecting kind of go that way as well, not just like naturally?
Yeah, I would say most of our collecting kind of fills in that space because we do a lot of shows in the Philly and in the Delaware and Virginia region. Philly sports is very popular here, as well as the Orioles in our area. So that's kind of where our primary personal collection goes. We also have our own individual collection. So like that's the unique thing about us as a couple is we have like our collection, I say, but then we also have our individual collections. Like I really, really love the Home Field Advantage set. It's a really unique and affordable, everyone says downtown style card. And I love the look of them. I love the feel of them. So I've been collecting those since the beginning of that because they kind of started when we jumped into the hobby. And I was like, that's something I can get on. So I'm about like 15 away with the new series to get the whole entire set completed, not including Legendary, but just kind of enjoying that. My husband really likes the Let's Go inserts, so he's been collecting those, and those are really cool case hits. So we kind of focus in on Philadelphia, but we have like a wide range of other cards as well in our collection.
Yeah, no doubt. It's nice to hear like you have your individual likes and stuff that you like to collect. You have your kind of dual collection, and then you can go off and kind of add to your own PC, which is very, very cool. And yes, I'm not going to argue with you. The home field cards are definitely aesthetically pleasing, and obviously, if you're opening stuff, you're not going to be disappointed to have pulling one of those as well. And they have that down. I think it's Topps' kind of answer to the downtown of Paninis and what have you.
Right.
But still great. Both of those are great insert sets that I don't think anyone complains too much about. Getting one of those because they're not that easy to get to begin with. So you mentioned
and they're not hard to find at shows either. They're really difficult to find at shows because they're very sought after as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Anytime I have them, I'm a dealer. They don't last very long as people like to add them to their collection. You mentioned being in generally the Philadelphia area and going to shows in Philly. And Philly's always been a major player when it comes to hobby and sports, both. But it seems like the last few years, I don't know, to me, I'm here in New York, really seems like you're hearing a lot more from that area, from collectors and content. What do you attribute that to? Just more people from the area getting involved in the hobby, or maybe people just paying more attention?
I think it's a little bit of both. From our experience, our first card show was the Philly show, which was a little overwhelming because it's a very big regional show. And it seemed like, and that was around 2022, I think was the first Philly show that we ever went to. And it was like right after the boom and it started to kind of settle down. And it was a little overwhelming, to be honest. So there were a lot of people, a lot of things going on. And I think part of it is just the amount of marketing and the amount of dollars that are being spent in the space, number one. And number two is friends getting other friends into collecting and other people getting other people into collecting. If you're a sports fan, it's kind of easy to get converted into the collecting side of things. We kind of did that with family members and friends. We're like, oh, you love sports. Why don't you collect sports cards or memorabilia or that kind of thing? So I think it's a little bit of both. And that area, especially with the teams as well doing so well, like the Phillies and the Eagles having a pretty good season last year, and even the Sixers making the playoffs helps as well because there's a lot of media attention in that area. So a lot of people are drawn to that area. There's a lot of card shops that are popping up in the Philadelphia, New Jersey region as well. So I feel like I hear every other week of a card shop popping up, and at least once a month it's in that area. So that also contributes to it as well. And I feel like people want to grow that space because it's such a very populous region and very popular to travel to if it's for sports or other events or for just being in the city experience.
Yeah, no doubt. I obviously, I mean, you're from the area, so I'll acquiesce to your answer. But I think I agree with you. I think it's all those things. You mentioned LCSs. We're seeing more of them launch. We're seeing even existing LCSs open up additional locations. In your area, you mentioned being from the Hershey area. Describe the LCS kind of where you are. Do you have many? Are they good? Whether you want to mention names or not, so I'll leave it up to you. Do you have some in the area that you're fond of? Do you think there's room for more LCS growth in your area? I'll let you kind of speak on that.
Yeah, so we have a handful of local card shops in our area within a 30-mile drive, which is common for us to go to things. Is about a 30-mile driving distance, is like probably about 10 local card shops, I say, which is a lot for our area, for not being a major regional area, because we are an hour and a half outside of Philly, but we're kind of like a hub because you can get to pretty much anywhere from Harrisburg. So you can get to Philly, DC, Baltimore, all of those places within an hour and a half of each other, which is really nice because we get to go to really cool card shows. But yeah, we always go to our local wax shop is Card Stadium. And then we have another really good friend of ours, Bailey. He owns Wow PA Sports Cards. He's got a really great shop with really good prices and good singles too. There's a shop on the West Shore that we go to. So it just kind of depends on where we are and what area we're in. There's a lot of good shops in Lancaster as well. We haven't been to a lot of those because we don't get down to that area as much. But yeah, we have a lot of really good local card shops in our area. And it feels like every day something's growing and something's adding to the area. I know our friend Eric with eDubs, he goes to a lot of card shows. He has a shop in the area. But I think like kind of my, I guess, big picture personal goal, it would be if we were to do it or if somebody else in our region would be to do it is to put one in the city of Hershey because of Hershey Park, the Giant Center with the Hershey Bears right now, and also the Hershey Park Stadium, very popular in our area for some concerts and events. I think it would be just good for our community, good for the economy in our area as well. And I think because the hobby is growing so fast in this region, it feels like that's kind of the direction we're going in. We're doing a show in July, which would have happened at this point, the first week of July. And he keeps selling out that show in Gettysburg every time. And it feels like every show in this general area sells out pretty fast. But again, that not only speaks to our region, but speaks to the hobby in general and how it's growing.
You mentioned, Hershey and liking to see a store. You also mentioned there, I caught you saying, Katlyn, about maybe you doing it. Is that something that you and Joey have discussed? Maybe being open in a future LCS, locally?
I think that's like really, I think everybody in the hobby dreams of opening their own card shop. If you've collected cards since you were a kid, or if you just started collecting, I think once you realize how big the space is, you dream of that. And I know that's kind of my husband's dream right now. Like right now, I think we just have so much growth to do and so many things to do, like outside of that I think that's big picture. But right now, I think we're just really focused in on our careers, growing our name, growing our brand, but also just being there for the community right now. So as friends and as collectors as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I had a store myself many moons ago, 92 to 97, here in New York. And, I sometimes I miss it, sometimes I don't. But like you said, it's if you're into the hobby and you love the hobby, I don't think I think there's very few people who have never thought about what it would like to have their own, LCS and do it and how they would do, seeing other people, how they do it, their own spin and take on it. And, I was back in the 90s before all the stuff we have now. So if I ever did it again, I don't have any plans to, but, I do have ideas that I think I would like to, implement. But probably more theory, more of a theory than it's going to be actually put into effect. But like you said, I think it's a great point. I think we've all thought what it would be like to do it. And I think especially if you live in an area where maybe there isn't one, and you're like, hey, we can fill a void here, and I'm not the only collector in the area. I'm sure of that. So there's a need and a call for it. So hopefully, if that's, I know you said it was Joey's dream. Hopefully that will get realized. That'd be really cool. And I know you guys will do a great job with it. Much like you do with social media. You're very informative, very sharing. You're not shy about your fandom, that's what fandom's about.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and at Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!
We are back.
Your guys' approach with social media. What's kind of and I know you're in the process, it's going to get bigger and better, but kind of what's your thoughts and your approach to, social media?
Yeah, so we originally started our social media page as just me, and it was just me, branded to me, and he was like, well, you're the female collector. It's a really unique space for you. And I was like, okay, let's do this. But then when we would go to card shows, everyone would go, oh my goodness, it's the sports card couple, because we go together. So we kind of did like a turn, like a 180, and was like, well, this would be cool. So yeah, I think our focus right now is just showing like what we do as a couple, what's our space like. We want people to get to know us personally, know our collection personally. We want to spend time with people in the hobby. We want to gain friends and a community, and that's our biggest thing with our page, is just kind of showcasing us. And though sometimes I am the face in the video, it's mostly because my husband has his own full-time job. So he's very busy with that. And then I also have a full-time job in the hobby. So it's easier for me to do the pages, but we've talked about recently, how can we grow this together? How can we help people get to know us? So on Fridays, we feature things about us, our favorite things, like we featured our favorite road trip snacks or our favorite cards we've picked up or recent pulls. So you kind of get to know our personalities a little bit more, and get to know what we've been doing, sharing what shows we're going to, photos of us at shows, what we're up to, because we want to build our community as a space for not only friends that we've made in the hobby, but for families and couples to see, hey, this is something you can do together. Even if it means you have your own collection, not necessarily like us, we have our collection together, but you can do it together and do this thing together, but maybe you have different directions in the space. And it's a lot of fun sharing that. And I really hope that we can kind of grow that, not just for ourselves, but for the hobby as a whole.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned you like to go to shows. I think anyone in the hobby, I think most people in the hobby would echo that sentiment, Katlyn. We're seeing more shows pop up at more intervals, and then we're seeing shows in cities that never really had them before. This is a question I like to ask people that like shows or are familiar with shows. Do you think there can be an oversaturation? Can there be too many or not necessarily?
That's a great question. I think I've had this conversation a couple times with some friends recently, because we do go to the Philly region and there are a lot of shows in the Philly, New Jersey area. And it feels like there are shows every week or every other weekend. So I think, yes, in certain areas there can be oversaturation, but in others, I feel like there's opportunity for growth. Because I know for some friends that live in the Philly, New Jersey region, they're like, well, it'd be easier for us to go to a show in New Jersey and we'd be more open to setting up there. Whereas some people are just like, well, I don't mind like us, we don't mind taking the drive to Chantilly or to Philly or to a New York show. So I think depending on what area you're in, there could be oversaturation. Like specifically the city of Philadelphia, I think there should be just kind of very specific shows that have built their brand. But even like there could be little local shows everywhere. If you can fill the space and you can get the people, why not do it? We're doing that in our region with some shows where there may be 70 tables, not like the big shows, but it still fills, it still gets a lot of people, because those are people that can't necessarily travel to a Philly or New Jersey region as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? Is get them in areas where no matter where you live, your commute to a show will be more reasonable than maybe it has been in the past. And when I get asked that very same question, which does happen, my answer is the proof's going to be in the pudding, Katlyn. Like, when promoters start maybe seeing either less people come through the doors as consumers or less dealers signing up and buying, paying, renting tables at the show, that's when I think we'll know. I don't think we're there yet. I'm not going to lie and say I'm not concerned that eventually, at the rate that shows are growing, that's always a risk. But like you said, Philly, the big areas with regional shows, obviously you got the national, which I call the Super Bowl, the hobby. They're not going to be affected by something like that. But some of the smaller ones could be the first ones. I don't think we're there yet. So that's a good thing, but it's something just kind of to keep our eye on but the hobby's also growing. I think there's more people in it today than there were yesterday. And so there'll be more people that will be going to their first shows ever and catching that bug and looking for more shows to go to, if not every week, almost every week. And so I don't think we're that close to it yet, but we'll see kind of how it plays out. I got to ask the question, as a dealer who did his first show at age 15 many moons ago, when someone comes up to my table, I see a person. I don't see male, female, black, white. I was raised that way. It was instilled in me. Unfortunately, not everyone is like that. As a female collector and content creator too, at this point, like how has your reception been? I'm assuming mostly positive, but is it more? Would you say it's more difficult being female, comparatively speaking, to maybe a male counterpart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for myself, not as much. Part of it is because I do walk around with shows with my husband. But now that I'm working in the industry full time, I feel like I get enough respect because I know the hobby. I could talk about it. I have a lot of knowledge at this point. I might not be the most knowledgeable female collector in this space, but I know enough to be able to say, I know these products and what's going on and what's happening. So I feel like I was overwhelmed with the amount of reception being in this space because I think people want their wives or their significant others to be part of this space. And I get to be one of those people that drives that movement, which is really cool. It's overwhelming, but it's a little cool. But there have been many others that have come before me, like Sarah Layton and Kayla Collects and Mama Breaks, who have been in this for longer than I have. And I look up to them. And I know many people will look up to me as well as how can I be part of this space that's growing? And the only way you can grow it is by growing all demographics, all races, all kinds of people, and inviting them and making them feel welcome. That's the one thing that I always tell people, like when they're setting up at shows or when they're like, how do I get people and other types of people in? Just be a good person. Like, be welcoming, be inviting, if they don't know enough, teach them, make them feel welcomed into the space. And that's the only way we're going to grow it. And that's how I felt like I've been able to be okay with being part of this space, is I felt welcomed, invited, taught, and grown so much. So I've had very, 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 very minimal bad encounters. And I'm very grateful for that. And hopefully I could provide that for many others to come.
No, it's important. I don't even like that question, but I think it has to, because I've seen it, Katlyn, firsthand. I'll tell you a real quick story. Like I said, I do set up at shows as a dealer. I had a dealer like set up in the same kind of quad box as me. I wouldn't call him a friend or acquaintance. I know him. I talk to him when we're at the shows. And, a young lady came up to his table, and it was just a little, it wasn't rude. He was borderline, but he was sort of condescending. And then after their, exchange kind of was done, I turned to him. I know him well enough to, I said, I said, hey, you could have probably handled that better. Why did you say this or say that? Have you said that to someone who was male in the same? No. And I'm like, and he said something to the equivalent, like, well, she doesn't know this. I'm like, how do you know that? Have you met her before? No, that was the first time. And I'm like, well, you don't even know what that person knows or don't know. You're just assuming that. And he kind of stood there and looked at me, and it was kind of like the light bulb went on for him. And I think he felt bad. And, I hope, that after that, he's more, aware of kind of, what we say or how we interact with folks is important. This was a few years ago. So, but what he said, while like I said, it wasn't rude, Caitlin, it wasn't super nice either. And that young lady might take that experience and I get it and just think all dealers are like that. Yet here I am standing next to and I'm not, but I'm kind of now lumped in because of one other dealer's actions. And that's the other thing I would kind of stress to folks is, while someone may be like that, not everyone is. To not, and again, in this case, he didn't know this young lady, but he had already, his verdict was in on her, and I think it's very unfair to do that. So I think he learned I hope he learned the lesson from just my conversation with him afterwards. I was very tactful. I didn't yell at him or berate him. I just wanted to point out a couple of things, and I think it was too late after the fact, unless he gets to interact with her again. Hopefully there's a second chance. Maybe he could apologize and start off again. But I know that happens. I've heard female collectors talk about similar experiences. I hate to see it, but like you said, I think it's becoming more the minority story than what majorly happens, because I think we've seen an uptick in women collectors, women holding positions in the hobby, such as yourself, even in with card companies. I'll mention Suze, who's held many jobs in the hobby, and a great example. And I think more people are figuring it out. I mean, I was raised to be like that, but I think we're seeing less of those kind of stories or interactions or exchanges. I'm not saying they don't happen, but I just think it's becoming less of an issue, and that's always a positive thing. And hopefully that continues, and you're carrying that torch and being an example as well now too, and that's important.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed that conversation with Caitlin. Really forthright. I appreciate that about her. Doesn't mince words, and a positive force in the hobby along with her husband, Joey. Here's the good part. If you enjoyed the conversation, there's part 2 coming next episode on Sports Card Nation. So this was the first of our 2 conversations. So she'll be back next week for the conclusion, and hope you join us for that as well. So with that being said, we'll have our Hobbies the People announcer and some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy Caleb, at Mr. Caleb on Twitter. And remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.